Good afternoon. This is a remote presentation for a paper called Collective Awareness and Social Sensing, Operationalizing a Natural Convergence. I'm sorry because I'm having trouble pronouncing some of these words. My name is Paola Di Maio. It's actually Dr. Paola Di Maio. And co-author is Jenny Ewer. Jenny and myself were looking into different aspects of this of social changes and things, and we started looking at study for this field, collective awareness and social innovation, and we came across some issues and wanted to make some points and raise these issues with the research community, since they seem to be pertaining to more than one field. So thank you so much to WIMS for accepting our short paper, which in fact is still reporting some exploratory research. And thank you for the organizers for making the arrangement to have us present remotely. We have approximately 20 slides. We will try to go through them very quickly. I am mostly doing this presentation, and I hope Jenny will send something, or she will be online. We should both be online for questions and answers when the slides are over. This recording is mainly intended to be a narrative to support the slides. Please have the slides open when you hear this. Slide 2. Basic an outline of what the presentation and the research is about. Novel concepts and tools are being developed to stimulate and promote technologies and environments, referred to as collective awareness, social innovation, and social sensing. We critically we evaluate critically literature and documentation related to research initiatives in this field, identify and discuss key issues and enablers to advance research and practice. Slide 3. Main purpose of this research is to share some observations, such as large publicly funded research programs targeting collective awareness and social innovation should rely on conceptual understanding of the domain to enable understanding and capturing complexity and dynamics. And that without appropriate understanding and representation of the domain, it is difficult or even impossible to evaluate the validity and impact of the efforts in research and practice. Also, to make some purpose of this research is to make some recommendation based on research in other fields, in parallel orthogonal fields, such as knowledge engineering and ontology engineering. And of course, we also do some self-promotion. Slide 4, scope of the talk. So basically, in the short paper, we managed to get the paper finished on time and accepted, which was good, thank you. But we did not manage to actually put in all the important stuff that is coming out from this observation. So the slides, you will see that there are some slides which are expanding on what the paper is. And also, overall, this research is largely exploratory. Slide 5. So what is collective awareness? We have a couple of definitions here. An extended awareness of the environment and of the consequences of social actions to take informed and sustainability-aware decisions, but also an emergent property of collective action, an emergent socio-technical phenomenon arising from the interaction of people using distributed, socially oriented platforms. So I picked this definitions a bit from around, the first definition I think is from the European Union, but several definitions apply. So in slide 6, I show how we learned about collective awareness from the technical field, when there was a requirement for developers to have some shared understanding, some collective awareness of the projects they were collectively working on. So collective awareness was first targeted as a tool, as a enabling tool for developers. And then when this ability or capability of developing collective awareness extended to people on social networks to have collective shared awareness of not only some shared project or technical task they're working together, but also of some social or some situation that they are in particular situations which impact societies at large. This is where collective awareness is extending from a small focus to collective awareness between a team of people working on a project to collective awareness of multitudes living in extended societies. Slide 7. So currently, there is an important emphasis on the social innovation aspect of this technological developments and how technologies themselves can provide the means to integrate with real humans, policies, and institutions. These are definitions and quotes from literature. You will find all the references at the back of the paper. And extended awareness we have the definition from the European Union. And so we therefore here in this research imply that collective awareness is an enabler for social innovation. Sorry, this is obviously one of the axioms. So why collective awareness now? Slide 8. Because the technologies have become adopted on a wide scale. So obviously there is some maturity of these platforms. We call them platforms. It could be environments. These connected tools which enable us to develop this understanding in parallel with others. And people are increasingly realizing that everything is connected and that therefore individual peace and happiness is limited in a troubled society. So there's no point in trying to develop our own peace and happiness and stabilities and prosperity in a world or in a society which is crumbling, because that wouldn't hold. And similarly, a society that fulfills the needs of the 1% and neglects the needs of the 99%, just to adopt the metaphor of the Occupy of the global movement, is not sustainable. So people are increasingly developing their awareness of being part of a greater whole. And individual countries cannot find stability and prosperity in an unstable, precarious global scenarios. And the troubles of one country inevitably reflect and impact other countries. Of course, all this happening, which is happening in an unstructured, uncentralized, spontaneous, bottom-up kind of way, is obviously becoming of interest to governments and large regulatory bodies who are saying what is happening. Suddenly, the control of what is going on is distributed. The crowds, the power of the crowds, etc. So, the European Union is throwing quite large amount of funding, or planning to throw, or at least it's saying that it's throwing quite a large amount of funding in this. And they have this program called CAPS. I am sure that a number of people have met Mr. Sestini, who was whizzing around Europe. I met him in Barcelona. I know he was in Paris a couple of weeks after, and he was everywhere trying to say, yes, this is important, we are doing this, we want everyone to be involved. So even the spirit of that particular funding program was kind of go-getting. Yeah. So the fresh stream of funding is also helping to focus the attention of the research community, obviously, on this field. Slide 10. So in doing some preliminary study or literature review to help us map the domain, and so to be able to pitch our knowledge and expertise accordingly, some of the issues and challenges which have come up can be summarized in the slide 10, some just brief points. So collective awareness is an emergent phenomenon resulting from the convergence of social communities and the technical scale-free capabilities. And it's from the bottom up, but of highly political strategic importance at global level. Above all, incommensurable, so there are no metrics, there are no ways we can tangibly measure, quantify the phenomena. Intractable, there are few theories, and there are no single theories that can help us problem solving, in fact, even identifying the research questions. So at the moment is not defined in that sense. And unbounded. So coming from the knowledge engineering, from a knowledge engineering background, the first thing that we do when we tackle a new problem in the new domain space, we define a domain. So this domain definition is about setting boundaries. But in particular, interestingly, in this field, the collective awareness, we are unable to do so. We are unable to actually set the boundaries. And this has profound implications for the research itself, as well as for all the research programs and artifacts that are developing from it. So despite being incommensurable, potentially intractable and unbounded, we can see that it's a potentially high impact and revolutionary field of work. Slide 11 has a quote of Schmidt in literature. It's already 10 years ago, in 2002. The notion of awareness was said to be used increasingly in contradictory ways. In fact, it is hardly a concept any longer. So, about 10 years ago, research was already studying awareness in relation to computer-supported collaborative work, the team collective awareness that I mentioned earlier. And even then, when awareness was being studied, it was easy to see how it is very difficult to define. And now that this topic has expanded from awareness to collective awareness in social innovation, this difficulties and challenges in defining the term, the concept, and the domain in general are exploding. So they are growing proportionally. Slide 12. So we start by trying to identify how many dimensions, or which are the dimensions that characterize this domain and this field of study and research for our own purpose, so that we can actually pitch our work and position ourselves accordingly. And I could not find any taxonomy, or even concept map. Certainly not in the public domain, and certainly not one which has been developed through consensus. So the idea is to start looking at existing taxonomies of the field that are already well understood, and derive a conceptual model for collective awareness. Then we would try to capture and define this domain, and then we would try to map it to neighboring domains, or the fields which we think we are doing similar or very closely related work that we should be aware of. Slide 13. So in slide 13 and slide 14, I present a couple of tables which are showing that an initial categorization effort exists already. Some groups or taxonomies or conceptual clusters exist already around related subjects. For example, type of awareness taken from, I think, 10 years ago. So we're actually 2004, but it's taken from literature. You can see how in this table certain types of awareness are identified as activity, process, availability, informal awareness, workspace, social awareness, group structural awareness, and so on. In the next slide 14, we see another type of categorization: macro versus micro, task-oriented versus social. So we see how some categories are already identifiable from related work. In slide 15, we identify a dimension which is called here as areas of impact, and not complete, so just purely a notion or example at the moment. But areas of impact is definitely one of the dimensions that could apply to this taxonomy. And here we identify from literature and from also some work that we're doing in the field, environmental monitoring. So applications are being developed to collectively monitor the environment. so that individual capturing of data sets, of individual facts or individual data sets, when aggregated on a large scale, could yield some important environmental awareness, or awareness of certain environmental conditions, which information about which could not exist elsewhere. Health, there are some very big potential for health applications. Safety, I am work a little bit in emergency and women and children. So one of my main motivations for working in emergency management, I do some work in this field of application, is happened to me that I was in Oxford Street, London. I would say thousands, maybe even millions of people in the street, and this guy happened to go under the bus ran over him, and he stuck under the bus, and nobody knew what to do. The driver didn't know what to do. Some people said don't move the bus. So the man was stuck under the bus for half an hour, and when the ambulance came, they removed the bus and got him, but eventually, unfortunately, he died. And so already at the time, 10 years ago, I was thinking, should we not have some application which we can develop, which we can actually ask people around us, say in the next 100 meters, 200 meters, do you know what to do, how to get this man out of the bus alive? So there is, and here, women and children. I'm in India. There is an issue with the women's safety. There is a lot of aggression against women and violence. And I'm at the Indian Institute of Technology, where we are developing applications using mobile infrastructure, which is very diffused, and there is high penetration of mobile devices in India, whereby people under attack could issue some emergency call, and people in their vicinity could pick it up, and a lot of potential there for collective awareness for safety and emergency. And is there a danger? Let's map it. Let's make everyone aware that there is a danger, etc. And then, of course, there are lots of other fields: accountability of institution governments, transparency, social enterprises, education, co-learning, social justice, and a lot on. Next slide 16. So while doing this early literature review field work in collective awareness, we are also aware, because we share information with our peers, that there is an amazing field of work called social sensing, which is emerging, where sensor applications collect data from or about human interactions. And the early applications in social sensing have been seen in location-based services, geolocation, and health. Early example of applications include GPS applications on mobile devices, accelerometers, location sensors designed to track human and vehicular traffic. Such data lends itself to a variety of rich applications in which one can use the sensor data in order to model the underlying relationships and interaction. This is a quote taken from Agarwal et al., who have done some significant work in this space. So social sensing is also emerging. Example of social sensing systems are, don't know if they're still all alive, but is Bike-tastic, BikeNet, Cartel, Peer, etc., also from Agarwal. Basically, the fusion of mobile, social, and sensor data is now increasingly being seen as a tool to fully enable context-aware computing. In slide 18, I take some of the field of applications typical in remote sensing, and explore and see how these are actually fields of application also for social sensing. So, for example, from a study, source Saisin, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's in there in the slide. Remote sensing fields of application are identified as demography, human health and epidemiology, archaeology and anthropology, can't pronounce them, international relations, law and policy, land use change and sustainability trajectories, urban studies, and all. So these traditional fields, which are well established and well understood in remote sensing, are now open to a whole load of social sensing when they're combined with social network capabilities. Next slide. Some questions. So, are these fields naturally converging? I'm talking here about collective awareness and social sensing. Second question, are there other emergent domains for this space which are converging? For example, a workshop in 2009 was entitled Integrating Social Sensing and Social Networks, workshop organized by W3C and Derry, Ireland. So, in order for us to even cursorily spot this convergence, we would normally create some models and then compare them and see is there an overlap. But one of the challenges that we're facing here is that there is no formal model as such for this field. So they're developing organically from the bottom up. And therefore it's very difficult to have a consistent model that can be compared to another consistent model. So we don't have a model of collective awareness to see how it compares to a model of social sensing. And this is one of the challenges that we face. Next slide, conceptualizing and operationalizing. So this is the main point that we are trying to make in this paper. So we have a lot of attention, which includes money, going into researching this field. When we explored this field initially for the purpose of doing an exploratory study to pitch our work, we realized that all of this attention and resources and money is actually going into a field which has not yet been mapped conceptually properly. So we know that we need to be able to conceptualize a field of research before we can operationalize it. And in the spirit of definitions, I have provided the definition for conceptualizing and operationalizing it. I'll try to read it briefly, but conceptualization, the knowledge engineers of you amongst you will not need to be reminded, but for completeness sake, conceptualization can be defined as the process of specifying mental imagery of our concept, sorting out the kinds of observations and measurements that will be appropriate for our research, and drawing boundaries around terms to make them tangible. And it can include linguistic lexical definitions, some categorization and enumeration, etc. Operationalization moves the researcher from the abstract level to the empirical level, where variables rather than concepts are the focus. It refers to the operations or procedures needed to give some measurable weighting or ranking to the concept. So here is where the famous, as they call it, non-vegetarians call it the pound of meat. So at some point we need to realize that we are investing public resources in promoting a field. And we are making decisions as to what to fund and who to fund in an area which has not yet been studied and defined. And therefore, we cannot see we cannot easily see what the impact is of this research unless we can operationalize it, and we cannot operationalize it unless we can conceptualize it. So this is more or less the arguments that this paper makes. And next slide, 21, identifying the problems and risks. So basically, which are the risks? So what are the problems in having this lack of conceptual artifacts, or lack of knowledge representation, lack of understanding, so to speak? If the domain is not defined and understood, the risks associated with this are known. Plenty of research, there I quote some in the paper: duplication, redundancy, inconsistencies, lack of parameters, poor management, potential waste of public money, and certainly risk of loss of opportunities, which is the greatest risk we should worry about. Slide 22, knowledge engineering approach, knowledge modeling. So, we have the tools and the techniques. We have the knowledge. We know, because we have been funding research with public money in knowledge engineering for the past 20 years. we have established some good practices. It is good practice to have some conceptual artifacts to work with, especially when we're talking about large projects distributed many people. This is an argument that the ontologists have been making consistently for the past 20 years. It has been demonstrated with studies. There are risks, and there are tools which can help us avert these risks. Domain modeling, ontology development, knowledge mapping, just some examples. So these are tools and techniques to capture and conceptual complexity of the new knowledge domains, and they exist, and they're well known and reasonably well understood. So one of the arguments could be that because these fields of research are non-structured, bottom-up, grassroots, there is no single authority. An ontology development approach could not be the most appropriate one. So I can hear at the back of my head somebody making the argument. But this is why the notion of open ontology is introduced and is proposed here. So an ontology doesn't have to be developed authoritatively from the top down. There are collaborative ontology development methods. Although these are still being developed, there are some agile, lightweight, collaborative ontology development methods, and one of these is called just enough ontology. So the which I present here, in fact, I presented it earlier. So, but the bottom line is that an open ontology can be means both an ontology which is in the public domain as well as an ontology which has been developed collaboratively amongst a large number of stakeholders. And so next slide, 25. One of these collaborative, agile, lightweight approaches to ontology development is called just enough ontology. It's a very simple framework which, based on existing established methods, was presented at WIMS a couple of years ago, 2010, and there is a paper and the slides if you're interested to learn more. So this is just an example of how the fact that ontology, the fact that this domain is complex, chaotic, bottom-up, grassroots, doesn't mean that we cannot develop a conceptual framework. There are methods, and here an example of one, which is my little self-promotion, because it's just enough ontology. It's a methodology that I developed. Slide 26, related work. Developing, so we are working on, we'd like to see more metrics and more impact factors for social innovation. I'm not sure I like the word impact factor, in fact, because of the connotation that comes with, but some way of understanding what all these collective awareness platforms are all about and how useful are they. So at the moment, that is also missing. And one of the ideas is to work on a transformation index for social innovation. Do think this should be a collaborative project. We would like to hear from people who would want to work on this. Conclusion, last slide. It is suggested that knowledge domain is mapped, that this particular knowledge domain is mapped in some way, that conceptual dimensions should be captured and represented using adequate methods. Such adequate methods exist, certainly to some extent, and at the minimum, a vocabulary and concept map to support these research activities should be developed and adopted. Then I have a few additional references. The full set of references is at the back of the paper. I've picked a few things for this slide set which are not in the paper, so here are some of the references. And Jenny and myself will be on Skype, thanks to David and Hector who set us up. So hopefully we can have a chat. If not, do get in touch via email. And we very much look forward to seeing better, more consistent and less risky research coming out of all this interesting work. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you very much. Bye.